Ever since Elon Musk began perpetrating his proverbial chainsaw massacre against the bloated Beltway bureaucracy, leftists have made it clear where they stand on the whole being against fraud, waste, and abuse issue. Protests have erupted outside Tesla dealerships. At least one washed-up 90s celebrity has proudly sold her Tesla to donate the proceeds to NPR. Faceless vandals, now deemed domestic terrorists by the White House, have targeted Tesla dealerships, and Republican legislators have been returning home to suspiciously unfamiliar attendees at their town halls, screaming about Musk's Department of Government efficiency. This begs the question, since when are U.S. taxpayers this passionately protective of fraud, waste, and abuse in federal government? Is it even real? That's the question. According to multiple reports, these protests are fittingly as fraudulent as the government fraud for which they advocate. Joining us now is one such Republican legislator who has confronted these protesters, so-called, and he's the one who's also facing these makeshift mobs, Congressman McCormick out of Georgia. Congressman, good to have you back. You've been confronting these people for a little while now. In fact, last we spoke, you were one of the first lawmakers to kind of face these guys head on. What do you know about them now?
We've heard a lot of different things. And what really boils down to, if you get a mob of angry people who have lost an election, they're going to be excited. This happened back in 2017 also. A lot of the old timers said, hey, Rich, it's the same exact thing. Pete Sessions went through this in Texas. When you get a bunch of excited people, the problem is it's okay to disagree with me. It's okay to be concerned. But when you want to just come and yell, that doesn't help anybody who actually came there to have a dialogue, to talk about what we can get accomplished, to talk about your real concerns. Now, there's probably some concerns that we need to address, certain things that are misinformation. But when you are just spewing the misinformation and you're a part of the misinformation and you don't want to know the truth, then it becomes a problem, because then nobody can actually learn what we're trying to accomplish. This isn't about cutting people's benefits. This isn't about getting rid of Social Security. This isn't about pushing grandma off the cliff like they keep on saying. This is about getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. It's just that simple, and anything else is construed.
Well, you've heard these voices now for several weeks, and at this point, you're now going to be able to discern what seem to be genuine complaints, and you may be able to discern what seem to be a little bit manufactured. If you were to make a very good faith effort to interpret what the real complaints seem to be, how would you summarize them?
Well, it's pretty simple. The only thing that mob wanted to ask when I was there is, why aren't you standing up to the orange man? Why aren't you standing up to King Trump? They hated Trump. They hated what this is all about. They hate Elon. That's why they're destroying Elon's property, because they want these people to fail. They don't want to accomplish what Trump's after, which a lot of times they have misconstrued to say, once again, you're taking away our health care. You're taking away our Social Security. You're taking away our benefits. You're making it harder on us. This is all just misconstrued lies, stuff from the left that basically they want to be reelected. They want to bring back the spending, but they know there's a ton of waste, fraud, and abuse, and they won't admit that that's what we're actually cutting. They want to misidentify it as something that is not, and that's the only way they can get their seats back, because quite frankly, we're going to remain in the majority if we can get the truth out there, and we'll lose the majority if we lose the idea of what we're actually trying to accomplish.
You know, going to Elon Musk himself, Tesla stock has reportedly dropped by about 50% since December. Estimated loss in value about $800 billion. If this backlash against Musk and Doge is indeed astroturfed, why does the consumer market seem to be following suit? Or if they're not, what do you think is going to happen in the next few months for Musk and his companies?
Yeah, so Musk will be fine. I just came back from SpaceX down in Brownsville this last week. Phenomenal facility. If you look what they're going to be doing, ramping up space exploration and satellite launches, they'll be doing a satellite launch probably every other day within a couple of years. I'm not worried about Elon or his money or anything like that at all. He's going to be fine. The irony is everything's been turned up on its end. It used to be somebody who rescues astronauts who've been stranded for 9 months would be a hero by anybody's standard. Only NASA can do that. Now you have a private individual who can do that. When somebody who's actually doing something to cut carbon emissions, which is what the left is in love with, even though I don't really get worried about carbon emissions. He addressed that, and the left loved him until he said, I support President Trump. Now, why don't they like that? First of all, they hate President Trump. They hate everything President Trump's about. They hate capitalism. They love Marxism. They embrace Marxism. Anybody who's a billionaire is a bad guy. Oh, except for the fact that Soros and Bloomberg and other people who are billionaires, they're okay because they're on our side. The dirty little secret is there's way more billionaires giving way more money to the left than there are to the right. We don't want to talk about that, though. We don't want to talk about that Elon actually cleans the environment. We don't want to talk that Elon actually saves people. We don't want to talk about that Elon actually provides satellite communications to people all over the world who are in real need that otherwise would have no coverage. We only want to talk about Elon Musk had some veterans fired who didn't really have a good job to go to anyways. Now, I love veterans, but let's face it, we're way too bloated in the government. He's going to make some mistakes, but what he's doing is in good faith for the good of this country, and it's being taken totally out of proportion so that it can make him the bad guy now, which is the ultimate irony of America.
You know, speaking of that rescue operation, a recent interview between Joe Rogan and Elon Musk revealed that Elon Musk called the situation a political football, and he launched a bit of a controversy because he said that the rescue date for these astronauts had been pushed beyond January 20 by the Biden administration in order to avoid what he says is an optical win for Elon Musk due to his strong support for Trump. So what do you make of that story? I know you're on the Space and Science and Technology Committee. You're close to Musk and his people and what they're up to. That operation was extraordinary and objectively a win. But if it's true that the Biden administration played around to make sure that this was not an optical win for someone that they viewed as a political adversary, what's your reaction to that?
This is exactly why Biden and his administration lost. This is why Harris lost. When you're more interested in politics than achieving an actual goal, then you're going to lose. Whether it be racing, going up into space and getting back our astronauts that are stranded, or stopping a war in Afghanistan when you really did it the absolute worst possible way because you just wanted to close down the war and not actually do it with a purpose after a $2 trillion 20-year investment with 2,462 lives lost. You're more worried about getting a political objective done rather than actually benefiting the American people or anybody else around the world. The US aid that we actually supply around the world has some real benefit, but when you make it wasteful, fraudulent, abusive, when you're benefiting people to make them millionaires rather than feeding the poor and actually curing disease, then you've lost your way. And the Biden administration totally lost their way. That's why they lost in a big way. And if we continue to do the right thing, I think we can win again.
Well, the messaging is pretty clean, pretty clear from the Musk and Trump and, MAGA contingent. And that is, there's a lot of cleanup that needs to happen. But when you start moving in, as you've encountered in these town halls, the typical Democrat talking point pushing back is, you touched on this earlier, they're saying that this is cutting essential services, this is cutting veteran benefits, this is causing real pain amongst hardworking Americans, and what helps the Democrats in this little talking point is they look at tariffs and they look at some increases in our day-to-day spending expenses, and they use that as a way to bludgeon the current administration and their policies. Where do you think that goes by summer? As the summer heats up, as these protests continue, is that going to have enough momentum, or are they going to have to shift gears?
Well, the next elections are about a year and a half off, so we have some time to adjust, and time will tell. These tariffs, whether it be on a commodity like steel, or whether it be on a country that has unfair tariffs on us, that's yet to be seen. So far, President Trump has been brilliant in applying tariffs that have gotten reciprocal changes in tariffs applied by other countries, or by getting them to lift unfair treatment, such as allowing us to return criminals to Colombia or Venezuela. But the real pain is yet to come. If we do have a trade war, it is going to be painful. It is going to cause inflation. I hope that doesn't happen. So far, President Trump has been brilliant. His foreign policy has been brilliant. People underestimate him all the time. What he did in the Abraham Accord last time should have gotten a Nobel Peace Prize, quite frankly. But there's always going to be mistakes to be made. I think Elon Musk was the first one to admit, hey, we moved a little bit too fast in this area. We need to go back and rehire some people we fired. That's some of the growing pains we're going to go through. But I think overall, the fact that he's willing to admit a mistake and go back and fix that shouldn't be criticized. That's something good. That we're not so idealistic that once again, like Biden did, where I'm gonna shut down a war the wrong way. We're actually going to take our time and go back and say, oh, you know what? I could do better, and I'm actually going to correct that. That's good. That's humility. That's the ability to adapt on the fly that Biden never had. He continued down the road of unflinching, horrible policy, whether it had to do with foreign policy or rescuing astronauts in space or anything else.
It feels like as we go into the summer, there's going to be more of a concerted effort, either from the judicial side, as we saw with this Judge Anna Reyes all of a sudden becoming the head of our armed services, jumping up and telling the president that, look, you can't ban transgenders from the military. You see offenses from the judicial side, you see them from this astroturfing kind of protester side, and it makes you wonder what they're going to decide sticks. It feels like the judicial approach is working for them as far as resistance goes. But I'm curious what your take is as far as the money is flowing. So much of this has been taken down by Doge. And so the attacks are going to be waged around Trump, at Trump. Where do you think the money flows from here if Doge is taking out the foundations?
So let me separate these issues because Doge has nothing to do with transgenderism. But what's interesting, I was in the military from the early 90s to basically 2017. I've watched this whole transgender thing play out. When I first joined the military, you couldn't be gay. You could not be a homosexual and be in the military. President Clinton said, yeah, don't ask, don't tell. And nobody said anything. We didn't have a legal challenge. And then President Obama said, you don't even have to hide it now. You can be openly gay in the military. And then President Biden said, so notice, Clinton, it's okay to be in the military as gay. Biden, it's okay to be in the military and flaunt it. Biden, it's going to actually be transgenderism is okay. Not even thinking about the impact of transgenderism in the military. Now, transgenders have a 40% chance of trying to commit suicide, just by statistical analysis. Now, you're going to put them in the most highly volatile, high-stress environment you could possibly have, and you expect that to get better. Not to mention if you're getting a surgery, or if you're having hormonal therapy, or if you're in psychotherapy, which all of them are, you're non-deployable, which means somebody has to deploy in your place. How is that fair to anybody in the military? We don't even accept people with flat feet. And you want me to accept somebody who has a 40% chance of trying to commit suicide under the highest stress environment possible when we don't even have bathrooms for you? Are you kidding me? And that's supposed to make sense to anybody?
Well, I love when Secretary Hegseth, he tweeted out, he said, well, you can, Judge Reyes, you can report to the Pentagon at 0600.
That's right. And this is what I don't understand is, once again, they never had a problem with President commanding that this should be done. But all of a sudden the president said, no, I don't want to happen what some former president said. And all of a sudden now it's a legal process. Tell me how that's consistent with any legal precedent. It's not. If the president is the one by executive order that made it happen, then the president by executive order can make it not happen. That's just common sense. I don't need a law to tell me that. But the law is that the president is the commander-in-chief. He gets to set policy and we enforce it. And guess what? If you want me to vote on this, I'm ready to vote right now. I say any single military guy in the Congress, I would be surprised if you would have the stupidity, the temerity to actually say, yes, transgenders should be in the military because it's good for them. It's not good for them. It's not good for us. It's not good for a mission accomplishment. What benefit is it other than some political agenda from the far left to make somebody happy when it really has nothing even to do with making those people happy? It doesn't benefit them. If you think it's a lack of opportunity for what? To go to a high stress environment where it's paid for? Is that what it's about? Paid for, more to your point, on money, so that the military can now pay for something very expensive, which they don't have the money for to begin with? This is insanity at its greatest political pinnacle. We need to get rid of it.
Well, with guys like you in Congress, I would not be surprised if a bill actually does come to the floor. Hopefully you'll come back with us to give us all the updates if it does. Congressman, thank you.
Always a pleasure. Semper Fidelis.
The threat of Chinese influence in the United States could take a turn off a cliff. Chinese foreign policy expert Gordon Chang explains. Stay tuned.